Thank you very much, and thanks to all of you for joining us today. Indeed, my name is Mikko, and I've spent the last 26 years hunting hackers, trying to understand where the attacks that we see are coming from, and more importantly, who are the people behind them? Who are these people? Who writes the viruses? Who creates the malware? Who runs the botnets? Who sends the spam? Who's launching the denial of service attacks? Who are these people, and where are they from? And why do they do what they do? And one of the things I've discovered during my years in the business is that there is no single answer to this question. We have quite different groups doing hacking or online crime for different motivations, targeting different organizations, which of course means you fight them in different ways. So really, the very first thing an organization should do when they start thinking about their defenses is to do their own threat assessment. Who are we? What do we do? What is our business? What do we have? Who's interested in us? Who is interested in our stuff? Who's interested in our data? Do we have to worry about hacktivists? Do we make people angry at us? Might there be a case where they will retaliate against us? Or do we have to worry about foreign nation states? Are we doing something that makes us a target of spying? Maybe our organization was targeted by traditional spying before the internet. If that's the case, then you are certainly being targeted by online spying today. Or maybe your organization has to worry about criminals. Maybe you have something worth stealing. Credit card information, passwords, financial information, payroll information. And only once you've done your homework, once you've done the research yourself on your threat assessments, then you can start figuring out exactly what you're supposed to be doing. And then you can put your limited resources and limited budgets in the right places. So we really are the first generation that's living on the internet. If you think, let's say 100 years in the future, and imagine someone writing a history book about our time, about the early 2000s, what's the number one thing he's going to mention about this time, our time? Well, that's going to be the internet. Like, this was the generation that first went online. Because internet is changing everything. It already has. It is the biggest single thing that has happened over the last decade. And it happened during our lifetime. We lived through it. Older of us in the audience remember how 25 years ago we were still using these. Remember these? Floppies? You don't see them anymore. Why? Because the internet. I mean, this is the USB thumb drive of the 1990s, right? 360K of data. 25 years ago, computers were not connected to each other. Today, it would be hard to find a computer which would not be connected to some kind of a network, most likely the internet itself. So this has been a massive change. But in fact, it's only the first revolution we're going to see during our lifetimes. With any luck, we will see 3 revolutions. First of which was the internet revolution, which already happened. Then we have the one which is happening right now, the IoT revolution. And then maybe we will see general AI still during our lifetime. That's going to take a while. But it's not impossible. And we were given a free and open internet. We all got a free and open internet. That's what we were given. And now the question is, what kind of an internet are we going to leave for the next generations? Will it still be free? Will it still be open? Good questions. Because internet is being threatened. It's being threatened by censorship. It's being threatened by surveillance. And it's being threatened by crime. And we see examples of crime all the time. Last week we got new news about the Yahoo breach. Yahoo breach actually was in the news already 2 years ago, but at that time everybody thought that the amount of stolen information, stolen credentials from Yahoo was around 1 billion accounts. Last week we learned that it wasn't 1 billion accounts. Last week we learned that the thieves actually stole 3 billion accounts. 3 billion accounts, which creates a question. Actually, it creates two questions. Question number one: how the hell does Yahoo have 3 billion users? Like, who the hell uses Yahoo? Give me a break. Question number two: who did this? Who did it? Who hacked Yahoo? And the answer is he. This guy's called Karim Baratov, a Russian hacker living in Toronto, Canada. He's currently sitting in a jail cell in the United States. He was extradited by Canada to USA 2 months ago. He's waiting his trial about hacking into Yahoo. Now, as we do research on cases like this, one of the things we try to do is to find the social media footprint of the online criminals we track. So here is Karim's Instagram, which paints a picture of a 22-year-old hacker living the life of a 22-year-old hacker in Toronto, Canada. Young guy, parties a lot, goes to, sports events, and he likes cars. So here's Karim with his Mercedes and with his Aston Martin. And his Aston Martin's license plate number is Mr. Karim. Here's a picture from his Instagram with his car keys: Mercedes, Lambo, that's a Rolex, Ferrari, and a Maserati. And here's a picture from his yard: that's a motherfucking Rolls Royce. A Rolls Royce. And they say crime doesn't pay. Clearly crime pays. But of course, here we have a happy ending, which is that Karim is no longer enjoying his Rolls Royce because he is in jail. So who do we blame for this? We have to find someone to blame for all the security problems we have. Well, we can blame this guy. His name is Gordon Moore of Intel fame. You might have heard of his law, Moore's law, which says that computing power roughly doubles every 18 months. But for us, even more importantly, there's the reverse of Moore's law, or actually inverse of Moore's law, which is that the cost of existing computing power halves every 18 months. Which means that the price of these is plummeting. This is a tiny circuit board running a chipset made by Honeywell. This is what you use to convert an appliance from traditional appliance into a smart appliance. These chips run our IoT devices. You'll take a traditional washing machine, you put this in, you have a smart washing machine. You take a toaster, you put this in, you have a smart toaster. And I am the father of the Hypponen law, which says that whenever something is described to you as smart, what you should be hearing is vulnerable. So, a smartphone, vulnerable phone. Smart watch, vulnerable watch. Smart car, smart city, smart grid. You get the point. As we connect our stuff to the internet, they are now accessible not just by the good guys, but also by the bad guys. Another thing which is happening, in addition of everything becoming cheaper and cheaper, is that everything is becoming smaller and smaller. And for this example, I'm going to need the help of IBM. Thanks to Robert for the previous presentation about IBM's capabilities. Let's have a look at what IBM did 20 years ago. Because 20 years ago, IBM kicked ass. This guy's ass. This is Garry Kasparov. Kasparov, not Kaspersky. This is Garry Kasparov. Sorry. Kasparov, who just lost a game of chess to a machine built by IBM. This machine, Deep Blue. Actually, it was IBM Deeper Blue which beat Kasparov. They had a match in 1996 which Kasparov won. IBM went back to drawing board. They increased the computing power of Deep Blue by roughly 100-fold to create the Deeper Blue, this machine, which then beat Kasparov. And I remember reading articles about artificial intelligence in the 1980s. 1980s, long time ago. And in 1980s, I remember that the idea we had was that once we have a computer which is able to beat the best chess player in the world, then we have artificial intelligence. And then, when it actually happened in 1997, then we sort of collectively changed our minds. And actually, yeah, okay, it beat Kasparov, but that's not intelligence. That's just calculating. So we keep moving the bar on what we actually mean by AI, or general AI, or wide AI. But the lesson here today is that the massive computing power on this device, on this computer, which actually, it's pretty big, actually had its own power generator and everything. This was capable of doing 11 megaflops a second. The phone in your pocket does 800 megaflops a second. So you all have a supercomputer in your pocket. Your phone can beat 10 Kasparovs at the same time. And it doesn't need a power generator, it runs on a battery. 20 years, and this becomes this. So think about 20 years into the future. Everything is becoming cheaper and cheaper. Everything is becoming smaller and smaller. And these trends are leading us to a new world. And when everything is going online, we, computer security people, we have to understand and realize what we're actually doing. And this took a while for me to realize, because I've always been a computer security guy, right? I'm a computer security guy. I secure computers. That's my job. I'm a computer security guy. I secure computers. Well, I was wrong. Because our societies run on computers. Everything runs on computers. Lights are on here because of computers. The lunch you had today was at least partially manufactured in a food processing plant which runs on computers. The water is coming out of taps because of computers. Everything is running on computers. So if you are a computer security person, your job is not to secure computers. Your job, our job, is to secure the society. That's our job. That's your job. And we got a good reminder of that in May and June. In May with WannaCry, in June with Petya. Both ransomware Trojans which hit massive amounts of infrastructure, including critical infrastructure, including power plants, including train control centers, including ATMs. I chose this picture of Petya. It's my favorite picture of Petya. Why? Because it's an ATM. And normally, when you go to an ATM, you are asking money from ATM. Now it's the ATM asking money from you. Please pay $300. Petya was bad. WannaCry was bad. Petya was worse. WannaCry was spreading using a vulnerability in Windows. Vulnerability developed and weaponized by a US intelligence agency, then leaked or stolen from them, and then used by the North Korean government to create a ransomware Trojan with which they were trying to fix their budget deficit by collecting Bitcoin ransom payments from victims around the world. So it was pretty bad. Petya was worse. Petya was not using a vulnerability from the NSA. Petya wasn't using any vulnerability at all. Well, actually it was, but that wasn't the big part. The way it really spread was that once it gained access to one workstation in your corporate network, it would collect the Windows authentication tokens from memory and then re-authenticate itself with those tokens, with your rights, to other computers in your network. And if you had the right to run programs on other people's computers, it would run itself on other computers in the network. This was not a bug, this was a feature. This is how Petya spread. Now imagine when it hits a computer where the currently logged in user is an admin. Then imagine that he's the domain admin. It's pretty bad. It's going to run itself on every computer in the domain. All right, and now we're thinking about, the workstations, the laptops, the desktops. No, the servers. Think about the servers. Because when Petya hits a machine, it overwrites the MBR with the code that displays this ransom message. MBR is the master boot record. You take the first hard drive in your system, it's the first sector of the first platter. It's the very first code which is executed on the computer after BIOS. It overwrites MBR, then after 0 to 60 minute random delay, it reboots the computer and it immediately reboots here. When you boot up an infected machine, it immediately goes to the ransom page. It doesn't load Windows. It doesn't boot any operating system. It goes to this. Now imagine this happening, not on your workstations, but on your servers. Imagine this happening on your AD. Then imagine it happening on every AD you have in your enterprise in 50 different countries around the world at the same time. This is what happened to some of the organizations hit by Petya. And this is why Petya created multi-billion-dollar damages. This is why my iPad that I purchased from Apple in the end of May was delayed by 3.5 weeks. Because many logistics companies were hit by Petya, and they were unable to ship containers because their computers were down, because when their computers were down, their whole piers, their whole cargo harbors were down. In some cases for weeks. Pretty bad stuff. This is the kind of problems we see. And the mega trend that made ransomware Trojans such a phenomenon is cryptocurrencies. It is the fact that now, for the first time, criminals have a way of moving money online without us being able to follow the money. This doesn't mean that blockchain is bad, because it's not bad. Blockchain is a tool. Can be used for good, can be used for bad. But of course, criminals love ways of moving money without getting detected. The IoT revolution really didn't start from home devices and home appliances. It did start from factories. Factory automation, industrial control systems. For example, Siemens has been building factory automation systems already, well, since the 1980s. So this is nothing new in that environment. But now this shift is coming to our homes. Now, when we look at the kind of risks that connected devices bring to our homes, one of the things that we hear about regularly is cars. Now, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the last Fast and Furious movie, sorry about it. One of the plot ideas in the movie is about hackers hacking cars and then using those cars as weapons, right? And this is sort of the idea we immediately think about when someone mentions car hacking to us. That, oh my God, evil hackers will hack my car. And then they will disable my brakes. And then they will drive me off a cliff and then they will kill me. That's what people think. And that's what movies like to portray. Well, this is what we call a movie plot scenario. It's the kind of things that could happen. It's the kind of things that could be done, but they won't. It could be done technically, but it's unlikely to happen. Why? Because hackers don't want to kill people. It's also illegal to kill people. I checked this. It's illegal. Can't do it. So when we think about real world problems, we have to think through the motivations. Like, why would somebody hack a car? What's in it for them? So what's going to happen will be attacks which are closer to this. Here we have a real computer, real security camera footage of a guy breaking into a Jeep to steal the car. Car theft. And as he gets into the car, he doesn't start hot wiring the car. Instead, he takes out a MacBook right there. Then he uses a USB ODP2 cable to connect his MacBook to the ODP channel of the car and starts typing away. 2 minutes later, the alarm, which is now blinking right there, stops blinking. 2 minutes later, he drives off with the car. This is what car hacking looks like. This makes sense. Because this makes money. And we already have a big problem with car theft gangs. And they would definitely much prefer to steal cars by hacking them instead of breaking windows and hot wiring the cars. And let me also make a forecast that self-driving cars one day will become self-stealing cars. You can imagine waking up in the morning to realize that your car has driven off on its own in the middle of the night. When that happens, mark my words, called it. It's going to happen. So everything's going online. Smart washing machine, smart doorbell, smart TV. Remember the law. If it's smart, it's vulnerable. And everything is going online. If you plug it to the electricity grid, you will be plugging it to the internet grid as well. And then we end up with vulnerable systems. Systems like light bulbs. Last year we found light bulbs which were leaking Wi-Fi credentials. Light bulbs which were leaking Wi-Fi credentials. That's pretty bad. Suddenly, the weakest link in your network is not your firewall or your servers or your workstations, it's a light bulb. And in a corporate setting, it could be that this is something that an employee brought to the workplace. It's not maintained or installed by the IT department at all. Your IT department doesn't know it's there, but it's there and it's hooked up to your corporate Wi-Fi and it's leaking your corporate Wi-Fi password to anybody who wants it. Or we find vulnerabilities from dishwashers, and you heard me right, from dishwashers. In this particular case, it's a web server directory traversal vulnerability. So when you connect to the web server on your dishwasher and send it this command, you will get the passwords from the device. Let me repeat the beginning of my last sentence. When you connect to the web server on your dishwasher, what the hell? Sometimes it feels like we've built a monster, doesn't it? Sometimes it does. And all of these devices, of course, will have to connect to some kind of a cloud backend. They have some server infrastructure somewhere, otherwise they won't work. And the question is, how long will that cloud backend be there? When you buy your dishwasher today, and it needs some cloud storage system somewhere, most likely in Amazon or Microsoft or IBM Cloud, will it still be there in 10 years' time? Your dishwasher probably still works well, we hope it works after 10 years. But will the cloud backend still be there? Like, will the company that built the device still pay the bills to Azure or AWS or wherever it's being hosted? What about 15 years later? 20, 25? This is especially problematic with things that we use for long periods of time, like cars. When you buy a car, you expect to drive it for a long period of time. I'm driving right now a 17-year-old car. I'm most likely driving it for at least another 10 years. If you buy a new car today, it will definitely have some kind of a cloud backend. Will the cloud backend be there in 30 years? And when it's no longer there, how will the car fail? And we got an example of this last May. Because last May, Amazon had problems with their S3 storage platform buckets. So storage on Amazon Cloud was down. And I spent that downtime, which lasted 3 hours, I spent that time on Twitter looking for reports from people who were reporting what went wrong, like what didn't work because Amazon was down. That was mostly people complaining about some website which didn't work, or some mobile apps which didn't work, or some games didn't start. But then there was this one guy who said that he was making food when Amazon went down. And now he can't turn off his oven. I can't turn off my oven because Amazon is down. Like, what? Welcome to the bright future of IoT. So when we build our connected devices, we have to make sure that when the cloud backends no longer are there, the devices will fail in a secure and safe way. So let me make a forecast. Long-term forecast. What's going to happen? I'm forecasting that we will see a human uprising against the robots. I can repeat that. We will see a human uprising against the robots. And this is not a long-term forecast. It's fairly near-term. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking that Mikko has gone crazy, right? Or you're thinking about something like this. And I'm not speaking about this. I'm not speaking about Terminator 2 when I speak about human uprising against robots. No. I'm speaking about these. This is a trash can, or a trash container. And the yellow thing there is a device built by a company that I have some friends working in. It's an IoT sensor for city or county trash can systems. The idea is that you install these sensors, these IoT sensors, into trash cans. And then they will report over the internet where the trash cans are and how full the trash cans are, which is pretty clever. And then the county or city can optimize how often they empty the trash cans, because now they know how full they are. Not bad. They call this the Internet of Bins. And as this company started deploying these sensors into real-world installations, they were surprised, because these things started failing much more than they were expecting. They were breaking down, and they really weren't expecting that, because, I mean, it is designed to be put in a trash can. It's really hardened, and it's supposed to work for 10 years without needing any service. And they started breaking down, and they couldn't figure out why, until they started looking at security camera footage. And from the footage, they learned that they weren't breaking down by accident. They were actually being broken on purpose by the trash can emptying truck drivers. They were beating them into pieces. Why? Because before the sensors, they would go around the city once a week emptying the trash. Now they would go around the city once a month. They hated these sensors for a good reason, because these sensors were taking food out of their mouths. And people are not just going to happily take that. They will fight back. In the United States, the most common job title is fast food worker. The second most common work title is a truck driver. Every single truck driver will be out of a job within a couple of decades. because self-driving trucks will become a reality. And those truck drivers, hundreds of thousands of them, they will not take it sitting down. They will fight back. We will see problems coming out of this. We will see humans rise against the robots which are taking away their jobs. It's not about Terminator. It's about the trash can truck drivers breaking sensors. But it's not the first time we've seen massive shifts because of technology. Of course it's not. Let's think back 500 years. 500 years ago, we made a big invention. We invented artificial power. Before that, whenever we needed to build something, we built it with muscle power. Like if you wanted to build a house, you had to build it yourself, or maybe use power of animals like horses to help you. Then we invented the steam engine, and then a little bit later the electrical engine. Artificial power. You no longer had to use muscles to make stuff. And a lot of people lost their jobs because of that invention, the invention of artificial power. Now we are inventing artificial intelligence. And a lot of people will be out of a job. And it's not just the truck drivers. Eventually it's going to be lawyers, judges, engineers, programmers. They will all be replaced. So there will be a revolution, and it's going to be painful. But if you look back to the invention of artificial power, I don't think any of us would prefer to live in a world where we would not have invented artificial power. I think it's kind of cool to have artificial power. And I think the same will happen with artificial intelligence as well. So I consider all of us to be lucky. Lucky because we get to live during extraordinary times. We get to live through multiple technological revolutions in one single lifetime. We already lived through the internet revolution. We are right now living through the IoT revolution. And if we go jogging and eat our salads, we will live long enough to see the general AI revolution. At least, I hope so. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now let's hear if you have some questions to Mikko Hypponen from F-Secure. Please raise your hands. There's a microphone. No, it seems like none of these people are going to lose jobs anytime soon. I think they are in security business, and you mentioned our job is to, to secure society. Now, honestly, I was thinking about that while you showed the slide about predictions and the future, and well, we are merely here for one generation. Now, we might maybe think that our generation is somehow more important than the rest of them. We might maybe think that one of the greatest inventions of ours, which is internet, is like the backbone of the whole future. Maybe it's not. Maybe, the internet and technology in terms of fraud, cyber crimes, ransomware, it just unveils the worst part of us. We want to be fed. We want to live good lives. We want to have Lamborghinis, as you showed. So, in that sense, if we take a look at the future, just one technology surpasses another one, and we are the same people. So, we are protecting society from what exactly? So a long one, but you get the idea.
We're protecting people. We're protecting the society from each other, because at the end, the reason why we have all computer security problems is that there are bad people. That's really where it comes down to. Even if we would have vulnerable systems, even if we would have stupid users, if there's nobody exploiting the vulnerabilities or exploiting stupid users, we wouldn't have problems. But we have bad people, and we always will have bad people, which is a long-winded way of saying that these problems, in many ways, are not technical problems. They're social problems. And social problems are always much, much harder to fix. I'm a geek, I'm a nerd, I can fix your computer, I can't fix your social problems.
Yeah, in that sense, that's what I think. You see, we had this term globalization, and the companies are getting bigger, the people are getting poorer. Inevitably, less money in society leads to revolution, less jobs, less food leads to revolution. The example of the truck drivers. Now, we may come back, I don't know, hundreds of years ago, where the electricity came in, people lost some of the jobs. Elevators came in with the buttons, and suddenly those people who were operating elevators, I mean, thousands of them, especially in the US, they lost their jobs. And so they will find another jobs, or maybe there will be a revolution, maybe there will not revolution. So next generation will have different jobs. So can we? So the question is, you said, is the question of what kind of internet do we leave for our next generation? So what should it be? How should it look like? How should it act? So what's the vision of how should it look when we leave it?
I can tell you what it shouldn't look like. It shouldn't be a tool for oppressive governments to do surveillance on their own people. It shouldn't be a venue for criminals to wage crime against their fellow man. It shouldn't be a domain for the military to wage war. But those are exactly the directions that it's going towards right now.
Okay. So let us thank Mikko Hypponen. Warm applause. Thank you. Now, Mikko.